Saudi Arabia, and I get along great with all of them. They buy apartments from me. They spend $40 million, $50 million. Am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much.
Donald Trump has always loved Saudi Arabia. Back in 2015, he campaigned that way and never really stopped. It was the first country he visited as president. Early in the pandemic, the ex-president even bragged about his friendship with the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, commonly known as MBS, tweeting, "Just spoke to my friend MBS." This came after the CIA determined that MBS had personally ordered the savage murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi back in 2018 when his henchmen lured him to an embassy, hacked and dismembered the journalist with a bone saw. In fact, about 2 weeks after the killing, Trump's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the trip to Saudi Arabia to grip and grin with MBS. Now, as a candidate, Joe Biden took a much tougher line, calling Saudi Arabia a pariah state, vowing to punish the Crown Prince. But then, this past July, as gas prices soar, President Biden also made the trip to Saudi Arabia, where he fist-bumped MBS. The president took a lot of heat for that. And now look where it's gotten him. Because today, OPEC and Russia announced they are cutting oil production by 2 million barrels a day to raise energy prices, a move that would likely raise gas prices in the U.S. right before the midterm elections. This is the problem. In the year 2022, petrostates and their leaders basically control both the energy supply of the world and the political fortunes of democratic leaders throughout the world. Dan Dicker is an independent oil trader who spent over 30 years analyzing energy markets, also the author of Turning Oil Green, and he joins me now. Dan, first, give me your rundown of today's OPEC announcement and what it means.
Well, first of all, I thought it was a brilliant intro, Chris, because I think you have ample evidence that there was something very smelly going on between Trump and company and MBS. And besides the Khashoggi murder, which, Pompeo and Trump refused to address, there was that fancy $2 billion of money that was dropped in Jared Kushner's lap, to manage immediately after he lost power. So I think you're right about that. On the other side, I'm not sure whether there is the direct connection between what good he might have done for Trump and what bad he's doing for Biden in front of the midterms. What there has been an assault on oil prices. Now, first, we got to remember that the fundamental backdrop for oil is for it to be a lot higher than it is right now. I know people don't really believe that, but it's true. I mean, Russia has clearly removed one of the largest pieces of the global supply chain. It's now very much at risk whether Russian supplies will reach the West, whether they'll even reach the East, how much will be lost. But instead of prices going up, we've seen oil prices come down $40 a barrel over the course of the last 2.5 months. And that's been mostly because of, one, the Federal Reserve continuing to raise interest rates, but also with President Biden releasing supplies from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. He's released about 350 million barrels into the marketplace, forcing prices lower. So what the Saudis and the rest of OPEC is looking at, they're looking at a market that fundamentally should be in their favor, but has been entirely moving against them for the past 2.5, 3 months. And they signaled that they were going to do something about that. They were going to fight, in many ways, the Federal Reserve and European central banks and the Biden administration on price, because they feel at this moment that their prices are really getting disguised by monetary action. And so they took a very, very bold course today. 2 million barrels a day is a big, big number, and much more than I even expected.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very aggressive cut in production. We expect that to jack up prices high. Just for folks to track, when you talk about the actions of the Federal Reserve, as central banks across the world, not just in the U.S., are increasing interest rates to slow the economy down, people are betting on a decrease in demand for oil, which should push prices down, which is one of the things weighing down prices. But on the second thing, and this has been fascinating, Biden really, I want to show this graphic because I think it's really interesting from the political perspective. This is from the New York Times. The first graphic is gas prices on the left there. And the one on the right is disapproval of Biden, the Americans who disapprove of Biden. And what you see is that there's a real tight correlation. Gas prices go up, so does disapproval. Gas prices go down, disapproval go down. His approval goes up. And he has taken a very, very by any means necessary approach to gas prices. And it sounds like has had some success. You're saying the decision on the Strategic Oil Reserve Petroleum Reserve really did affect prices.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is more, again, all presidents use the tools at their disposal because, as you know, gas prices are a political nightmare for anybody in the administration. As you noted, Trump was able to go to Saudi Arabia and get the Saudis to give them more barrels in front of his midterms. So it's something that scares the heck out of every president. And yes, the public really responds to gas prices. So, President Biden is in a tough spot. But you do have, again, you have this difficulty in trying to measure how much you're going to balance what you're trying to do with gas prices in front of a midterms and how bad you want to sink an economy that's actually rolling along really, really well. Yeah. And so the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, using that, and again, using these kinds of controls, these monetary controls, and even, the windfall profit tax in the EU that was just put together. I mean, that also, it does a lot for something for price, but it does nothing for the supply problem. And that's really what you're dealing with right now, a really difficult supply problem.
So here's another aspect of the supply problem. I thought the timing of this was interesting, and I don't know that it was intentional, but it seems like it might be. Wall Street Journal today with this scoop that the U.S. plans to ease Venezuela sanctions, enabling Chevron to pump oil. Of course, Venezuela, one of the top oil producers in the world, who's been heavily sanctioned by the U.S. government, the government of Nicolas Maduro, who has been heavily sanctioned by the U.S. government for human rights abuses there. And there's a place where a lot of supply could come online. That announcement happening right after the OPEC cut felt to me like a little bit of 1 + 1 = 2. What do you think?
You're reaching for a couple of straws. The Venezuelans getting back online is difficult. What you see on the other side is, for example, Iran, who walked away from the JCPOA because the Biden administration cannot guarantee that Trump won't come in and tear up the contract again. So they walked away from it. And now that the Iranians are getting hit with fresh sanctions because they won't sign a new JCPOA. So their 3 million barrels are now at risk. I mean, we could go from market to market to market. Of course, the Saudi market is the most important. The Russian market has been, I mean, in many ways, like I started telling you, the fundamental picture is so bad for oil right now that to see oil prices at $80, as high as that seems right now to some people, it seems to me it should be a lot higher. So there's going to be this war going on between the administration and Europe, everybody who's trying to keep prices attainable for consumers who are going to have a very cold winter otherwise, and in fact what's going on in the fundamental supply chain, which is quite frankly a disaster and only looking to get worse.
Yeah, and when you look at it, when you take a step back and you look at governments throughout the democratic world, the battle between central banks, which often largely operate independently, who are trying to attack inflation, and then fossil fuel suppliers who want the prices up. And you've got democratic governments who can't control either very well, who are going to be paying the price at a time when you've got like really scary authoritarian movements. It's a very unsteady moment right now. Dan Dicker, always great to get your insight on this suite of problems. Thank you very much.
A pleasure. Thanks, Chris.